guys in the dark.
Everyone happens to have a bad boyfriend or a bad girlfriend story. Here's my bad boyfriend story. It was the summer of 1987. It was hot, and a sunny summer. I remember that we were in swimsuits on the lake in May, which hardly ever happens in the Northwest. I just turned 30 years old that year, and had been living single for nearly 3 years after divorcing my first ex-husband. And in 1987, I had broken up a 2-year relationship with the guy who would later come by my second ex-husband in 1989. It's a whole nother story. When I had met this guy had just turned 30 years old. He was really fit and extremely sexy. Sad thing is he actually loved his own body more than he loved mine, and he probably still does. He also was a jock, probably really still is. He religiously lifted weights. He played recreational softball. He was a great water skier and played basketball. He had been a high school superstar, and it soon became apparent to me that he was missing those high school glory days even at the age of 30 years old. I overlooked all of that because I was coming off of a breakup. It was summer, and he was so cute. There are many red flags that I ignored because he was a stud. It's embarrassing how many red flags that I ignored. He would call on a Friday to go out on a Friday night. He ordered milk in a fancy restaurant, and at the same time put the napkin around his neck as a bib, even though he hadn't ordered lobster or ribs. And he was pretty cheap. He didn't own a corkscrew, but I was so impressed that he was able to open up a bottle of wine with a screwdriver. I didn't care at the time, though. He didn't show up at any one of his own family overnight get-togethers where I had been invited to, that I happened to arrive separately with his brother. I was there the whole weekend with his family, but not with him. But my favorite story is the leather jacket story. Like I had said before, he was a jock. He played softball nearly every weekend. Now I love to play softball, and had played third base on my brother's rec league myself years before. And truthfully, I didn't really love watching it all that much. For one thing, he was the only one that I knew on the team, and it's boring to cheer for the only one player. And he liked having me come and watch him play. So I would go. We rode together. I would sit around alone for about an hour, because I didn't know any of the other girlfriends or the wives, before the game would even start. Sometimes I brought a book or a magazine to keep myself occupied. So this one time we arrive at the field for his late afternoon, early evening game. When we get there, he comes back, tells me that it is a double header, which he had not known before. Inwardly, I'm groaning, knowing that I have to sit through not one, but 2 games. But I put on my best girlfriend smile, and then I cheer the team on. By the time the second game started, it is getting colder. Most Northwest summers in the evening feel like winters. And I have not prepared because I thought that it would be over before dark, and it was sunny and warm when we left the house. Then it comes to drizzle, and now I'm getting wet, and I'm cold. Even though I'm in jeans and light sweater, I'm starting to really get uncomfortable. So around the 4th or 5th inning of the game, I've had enough and cannot stand it anymore. So I go over to my boyfriend as he is sitting on the bench, and I talk to him through the fence. I tell him that I am cold, and ask if I could have the keys to his car so that I can get his coat to wear. I remember that he was totally irritated, and had this look on his face, because I have interrupted his intense softball concentration. And he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is exactly the message, "Well, I don't know. You know, 'cause it's a leather coat, and it's brand new, and it's leather, and now it's starting to drizzle now, and that would ruin it, because it's leather." And then he pauses, and then asks, "Why didn't you bring your own coat with you?" And so I decided to go back to the bleachers and sit down, and I froze my ass off for about another hour. That would so never happen today. And it makes me pissed off at my younger self for not hailing a cab and getting the hell out of there right then at that very moment. But not only that, even more embarrassing is I stuck it out with him for a few more weeks, and only got out when I found out his old girlfriend was coming back around. The truth is, he actually never was into us, ever, and had that book. He's not just that into you. And if it had been published back then, I'm sure that I would have learned much faster than those 12 weeks of summer with that bad boyfriend, and it could have ended within 2 weeks. So, that happens to be my story. He was a douchebag, wasn't he? After my first marriage had broke up, my teacher and also friend Sandy introduced me to Chet, who happened to be a friend of her husband Jay. Chet was a photographer. I really liked him at first because he would take both my dog and me to cool places and photograph us frolicking around. One time we drove past a new housing development that had a waterfall built at the entrance. Someone had poured soap into that waterfall, and there were bubbles flying around the highway. Chet had stopped the car, got out his camera, took pictures of my dog. It was a small white German shepherd looking, fondling, and me playing with the bubbles on the rocks of the fake subdivision waterfall. Sadly, I never did get to see any of those pictures. Now, his problem was that he would ask me out, and then show up 1 or 2 hours late. And then he would just turn off the TV, even if I was in the middle of watching something really interesting. Whenever he came around, he treated my place like it was his, and that started to annoy me a lot. But because he was friends with Sandy and Jay, I put up with the aspect of his personality for more weeks than I like to remember. The last straw was one summer night, when he asked me to go out to dinner and a movie. When he showed up, I was in a dress and heels. That was the 80s, when we still wore dresses and heels. He had arrived riding his motorcycle. I had never ridden on a motorcycle before, so, stupid me, I didn't think about changing clothes into something more sensible. And it was okay. Riding on the back of the cycle while the sun was still out, on less traveled suburban roads. But when we came out of the movies, it was raining like crazy, and we decided the best way to get back to my condo quickly was to take the expressway. I promise you, you do not want to ride on the expressway in the pouring rain in a summer dress and heels. The rain felt like needles were piercing my skin. That happened to be my last date with Chet. After that, I just didn't want to see him anymore. Okay, so I had a live-in boyfriend for 3 years, fresh out of college. You know the days where the world is still new and exciting, and I was oh so naive. He went out every single Friday night without me, because I worked Saturdays, and was pretty particular about being ready for work. He kept coming home later and later. But remember, I was naive, so I thought nothing about all of this. Until my 22nd birthday, when I decided to have a big get-together. I had friends and family all come to the house. Since we were drinking, a lot of people had stayed the night. I go to bed early, around 2 a.m. It's not really that early, and he stays up for quite a bit. That's fine by me. So I wake up the next morning, and imagine my surprise when he isn't there. So I look around the house, and assume that he has passed out on the couch. I find him in the basement, not thinking anything else of it. So he wakes up. Everything happens to be good. Super affectionate, as it's now my real birthday. Hands over my present. A beautiful and expensive watch, and tells me how much he loves me, and can't wait to take the next step, which is marriage. A couple of the guests had stayed for my actual birthday, and I'm using my cousin's phone as mine had died. Lo and behold, a text message comes in that keeps interrupting my cell phone calls. So I go to click the ignore, and what do I find? A text from my cousin's friend asking how my boyfriend was in bed. It should be said that my cousin just turned 20 and is a good 100 pounds heavier than me. Not that it really matters. It turns out that they had slept together early that morning, which was my birthday, in the room right next to mine, and he pretended nothing happened at all. Many more things would be found out through this, but I still can't believe that. The nerve of the man who claimed that he loved me, cheating on me. I had dated plenty of bad guys. I was drawn to them most of my youth for some reason. The nice guys had bored me. But my best story was a mama story. I dated an up-and-coming young attorney for a couple of months. He was an only child, with a single mother. Danger, warning. Some of the signs that I never paid attention to. I have never been in such direct competition for a man in my life. I started wearing my hair in an updo. Mama started wearing hers up. I brought my guitar over to the house one night. They lived together. I know, danger. Next thing I know, she happens to be taking guitar lessons. Fortunately, the ick factor helped me to call a swift end to it all. He happened to get married, but not for very long, and was elected mayor of the town that we lived in. And ultimately, he had went to prison for 5 to 10 for ripping off the estates that he was managing for little old ladies. Can I pick him or what? Oh, And my ex, number 2, was an only child of a single mother, so I'm apparently also a very slow learner. So this story started with John, my first big crush in 8th grade. The guys that I fell for ended up marrying the next girl that they dated. John started dating Terry our freshman year and married her 6 years later. Cal, my date for the high school senior prom, got back together with me during my freshman year in college, and then got some girl pregnant and married her. Don, who I dated off and on during my sophomore, senior, and senior years in college, married a townie. I was a personal virgin during my college years, and apparently my not putting out was reason enough for these guys to impregnate their future wives. Then there was Lee, who I knew in college but had never dated. He changed colleges, and then married somebody from the Chicago area. I met him a year after I graduated from a former art professor's New Year's Eve party in Bloomington. Lee was single once again. We saw each other every single night for a month. We both lived in Chicago then. And then suddenly he went back to his ex-wife. These happen to just be some of my stories. I just had a boyfriend experience. My first boyfriend, as it happens to be. It started out really well. I thought that I was really happy. But there were some early warning signs. Like he wouldn't even let me pay for anything, even when I had more money than him. He had some really weird mood swings. He would also say that he would call me, and would forget, and then have an hour-long conversation with his best girlfriend. In the start, we would see each other every single day, and then without warning, he started ignoring me, and acting as if I didn't even exist. He wouldn't even kiss me. So I dumped him, and said that we should stay away from each other for a little while. The very next day, he said that we needed to talk, and that we shouldn't see each other anymore, even though I had already dumped him just yesterday.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.